You are listening to the weekly Dartscast. 1 hour 90.
Hello and welcome back to the weekly Dartscast in association with Darts Corner. We're back after the Grand Slam. I'm Alex Moss, and joining me as always, he is the darts statistician, Burton, DeWitt. How are you doing?
I am doing just fine. Almost Thanksgiving here in the U.S. Getting ready to eat a lot of turkey on Thursday, although actually we're not going to have turkey, but we're breaking tradition. But then again, we just had an American make the quarterfinals of a major darts tournament, so traditions are completely out the window this week. How are you, Alex?
Yeah, they certainly are. I'm doing all right, thank you. It's good to be back. We did take last week off whilst the Grand Slam was going on, but we will be looking back at events in Wolverhampton in a moment. Just to mention for our two guests on the show as well this week, we've got two players who are going to be in action this weekend, the Players' Championship finals. Long-time friend of the show, Connor Scutt and Dylan Slevin, both calling in. They're both going to be making their debuts in this event coming up, and also the World Championships next month as well. So we'll be chatting to them about that. But let's start the show with a look back at the Grand Slam. Luke Humphries doubling his major tally, beating Rob Cross 16-8 in Sunday night's final. A high-quality final from both players, but it is two major titles now in the space of 6 weeks for Cool Hand. And it brings us on to our question of the week that we've been asking our listeners, sponsored by Condor Darts. Our question of the week is, who do you make as favourite to win the PDC World Championship? And the options we've put on the poll: Michael van Gerwen, Luke Humphries, Gerwyn Price, or other. So who do you fancy as the favourite for Ali Pali?
Well, I'm definitely not going other because it is one of those three. And that's not saying I'm not saying that one of those three is going to win it. But the question is, who should be the favorite? Who do I make the favorite? And it is one of those three. And it's specifically the one that just lifted his second major trophy in the span of 6 weeks, Luke Humphries. And in fact, he won those two majors 2 days quicker than it took Michael Smith to win his first two last year. And as far as I can tell, in the PDC, that's the quickest someone's won their first two majors. Not the quickest that anyone's won two majors. Michael van Gerwen has won two majors in the space of a week. Raymond van Barneveld once won two in the space of 3 weeks when he won the UK Open and the Las Vegas Desert Classic. Plenty of players have won two pretty quickly, but to win the first two, no one was ever quicker than Luke Humphries in these past 6 weeks. And it's not just how quick it was, but it's just how good he has been. You know, we go back before the Grand Slam on our last show. I went through Chris Dobie's averages in majors this year, and it goes without saying they were impressive. You know, with the exception of one poor match, all of his matches were in the 90s to high 90s, and a couple that just cracked the ton. Well, I'm going to throw out the Grand Prix here just because it doesn't look as smooth if I include the Grand Prix. But obviously, you know, that double in, add the points, and he still was averaging, if you add the points, probably in the low 90s in those matches. But I'm also going to throw it out because he won it. So regardless of whether he averaged 40 or 100, he still won every single match there. Well, every other televised match since the Masters this year, we went out early. 95, getting through a last leg decider against Damon Hedda in the UK Open. Followed that with another last leg decider, 99, against the world champion. After that, 97, 101, 95, 95, 95, 106, 98, 96, 96, 97, 95, 100, 100, 101, 105, 103, 95, 104. That's his television tournament averages, starting with the UK Open, excluding the double-in World Grand Prix, which he won. 20 matches, none below a 95. And I should say I rounded down on these. Some of these were 0.97. I still rounded down. His lowest is still 95 and change across 20 matches. And he's won matches that are long form. You look at the quarterfinals, semifinals, finals, those last three there, 103, 95, 104 at the Grand Slam, all best out of 31. You look at the World Grand Prix, finally averaged 93 against Gerwyn Price. That was best out of 9 sets, set play. He's won long form matches. He's won long form set play matches recently. He's in the best form of anyone in the world. He's has more confidence than anyone in the world, and he's proven he can play at a level that only a few people in history have been able to play at over 30 to 40 legs. That puts him in phenomenal stead. And just looking back at this past week in Wolverhampton. I mean, over 100 each match in the group stage, but it was when he got out of the group stage that he really lifted his game. He never really let Ryan Searle into that match, and Searle was playing okay. I mean, Searle somehow was 3-2 up entering that first break, even though he was probably about 500 points down in the average at that point. Searle lifted his game from there, but from there he only managed to win 4 more legs. When he was playing poorly, he won 3 out of 5 legs. When he was playing well, Luke Humphries was so untouchable that Searle only managed to win a third of the last 12 legs. Gary Anderson was the only person to run Luke Humphries close, and definitely had a chance, but Luke broke in that 29th leg and didn't give Gary a chance in the 30th. It was just a masterclass, and then he just absolutely ran Wade and Cross out of the building. I mean, Cross was averaging 105 at one point, and he was 14-4 down. That's how good Luke Humphries was. Rob Cross was playing out of his skin and was lucky to get to half as many legs as Luke Humphries was. This is a phenomenal run of form, and I don't see anything in Luke Humphries' game that makes me think he will buckle or be nervous or have any level of stress when it gets to the World Championships. I'm not saying he'll win it. There are players who can play with him. Gary Anderson, for instance, and I think I'll talk about Gary Anderson later in this show, but there's no one who should be the favorite other than Luke Humphries, because right now there's no one who's even close to as consistent and as consistently brilliant as Cool Hand Luke.
Yeah, it's hard to argue against that, and a lot of our listeners are voting on our poll in the same way. A huge 62% are going with Luke Humphries is the favourite for the World Championship next month, 17% going with Gerwyn Price, 12% going with Michael van Gerwen, and 9% going with other, and a few of our listeners getting in touch with their thoughts as well at Say No More 33, saying Humphries should rightly go in as favourite, but I don't think he'll win it. It's a different beast getting over the line in that tournament. I reckon Price will end up taking it. Michael coming in with Peter Wright will take it again. I like you thinking, Michael, that pattern. Every 2 years, Peter Wright does win the World Championship, and we are 2 years down the line from that last one, so he is due it. But I think, like many darts fans, many pundits, it is hard to look past Luke Humphries at the moment. And during the final on Sunday night, Paddy Power, who are the new title sponsors of the World Championship, they did put Luke Humphries as a joint 9-2 favourite with Michael van Gerwen. But now at the time of recording, a couple of days later, he is now on his own as the 7-2 favourite. And I think rightfully so. And even before the Grand Slam, he would have gone in as one of the 4 to 5 favourites for Ali Pali, breaking that major duck at the World Grand Prix. But then to back it up just 6 weeks later with the run of performances that he's just had at the Grand Slam, and he's got a lot of people comparing him to a Michael van Gerwen from 2012 when he won the World Grand Prix and then absolutely went on a tear. And then you've got also comparisons to Michael Smith, who 12 months ago won the Grand Slam, then won the World Championship. And could Luke do similar? Could he go on a period of dominance like van Gerwen? Could he follow in Michael Smith's footsteps, win the Grand Slam, and then win the World Championships? Well, you look at how he performed over those 9 days in Wolverhampton. 6 of the 7 games he did average over the ton. The semi-final, a 95 average, close to a 96. And I think what impressed me most in that game is that when things weren't going his way, he was missing a lot of doubles. We now see this new mindset from Luke Humphries, where before he might let those misses get to him, he is able to now put it to one side, focus on the next throw, and he just looks so mentally strong. And when you combine his talent and ability, which we've seen for a few years now, we know what he can do. You match that with the mindset that he's got, he's going to take some serious stopping now. And yeah, some of the games in the knockout rounds as well, the game with Ryan Searle, the classic that he had with Gary Anderson in the quarterfinals, and then against Rob Cross, the scoreline looks so one-sided, but Rob Cross, 103 average, the highest ever losing average in a Grand Slam final, and Luke's done that to him, 16-8, won twice as many legs to beat him. And his opponents, they were throwing some great stuff back at him, and he was still coming out on top. And yeah, 2 majors in the bag, the 2 finals that he's won as well, very comfortably against former world champions Cross on Sunday, Gerwyn Price in the Grand Prix as well. These big finals, it doesn't look like they faze him, and the occasions don't seem to get to him. And okay, the World Championship, it is going to go up another notch. The pressure is going to ramp up, and over the next few weeks there is going to be a lot of talk about Luke Humphries being the favourite for this event. But I think he does go in as the favourite, and we have still got one event to go. We have got the Players Championship finals this weekend. We could see a player stake a claim for that favourite tag, but at this moment in time, you can't really look past Luke Humphries as the favourite and the player to beat at Ali Pali.
We'll get on to our Ali Pali preview in a couple weeks, but let's do just a couple more questions with the Grand Slam. One, of course, on the beaten finalist Rob Cross, his second major final of the season. Still not an appreciation minute, although I guess we gave him one for winning his first Euro Tour event earlier this year. But what do you think Voltage can take away from his week in Wolverhampton?
Yeah, he didn't go all the way, but I think Rob Cross does deserve an appreciation minute from us this week. And he was gracious in defeat Sunday night. He did say that the best man won, and sometimes you got to take it on the chin. But I think that the quote that stood out most for me after the final was that he said, "I'm playing great at the minute. I'm in a really good place, and I'm going to regroup, go into next week with the ambitions to win that." So the confidence is still pretty high for Rob Cross. And much like Luke Humphries, it was a week of top performances from him. You go back to the group stage, and I think he let that slip away. Even though he came through second in the group, he should have really topped that group because he was in a great position against Michael van Gerwen, who probably come on to talk about again later on in the show, but lost that game 5-4, bounced back to beat Fallon Sherrick in that winner-takes-all game, and another classic from the knockout rounds against Nathan Aspinall. Both players averaging 103, winning that game 10-8, and then the quarterfinals, 6-all, runs off 10 legs in a row to beat Damon Heta, and then holds off that late fight back from Stephen Bunting in the semi-finals. And as we just touched on, the final itself, to come off stage averaging 103, your opponent's won twice as many legs. And I think it was the Red Bit on Twitter pointed out that Rob Cross averaged 107 on the Luke Humphries throw and didn't get close to him in the end. But we probably didn't think much of it at the time, but very early on in that final, it probably was one of the key moments, wasn't it? We'd just seen Rob Cross throw that 170 finish to get on the board. It was back on throw, 3-2 down, hits the 180 to leave tops, and then misses 3 darts to get it level of 3-all. And after that, Rob Cross only had a dart or darts at a double in 3 of the next 10 legs. And all of a sudden, it goes from 3-2, possibly 3-3, to your 12-4 down. And that's, 8 legs behind. Your opponent needs 4. It's a tall order from there. So I'll come on to talk about it a bit more later about the players that are playing well these last few months, but you look at the averages for the last 2 months, and this is via our friends at Darts Oracle. Rob Cross, 6th on that list, 97.77. He is playing at a very high standard. The stats back it up. The run to the final backs it up, and I think he'll feel like that next big win is just around the corner. It could be at Minehead this weekend. He's one of only, I think, 2 players, him and Gerwin Price. They're the only 2 that have made the final of the UK Open and the Players' Championship finals at Minehead, and not won one of them yet. So maybe it could be this weekend for him. It's been a good year for him, winning that first Euro Tour. He's won on the floor. He's won a couple of World Series titles as well. And I think his game's in a good place. And if he keeps making major finals, averaging 103, I don't think it's going to be too long before he is coming out the other side as the winner, and we can have a proper Rob Cross appreciation minute.
Fully agree with that. I think Rob Cross, obviously, as you mentioned, that post-tournament interview, he's happy about where his game is. Just compare his interviews to James Wade's. James Wade is trying to talk himself back into form when he loses major finals. Rob Cross knows he's there. Yes, he wasn't good enough to beat Luke Humphries in the final, but I can count on 0 fingers the number of people in the world who were good enough to beat Luke Humphries in that final on Sunday evening because he was unplayable. Rob Cross, though, lifted his game to his opponent's level all throughout the tournament, although sometimes it was also bringing it down to his opponent's level. But he lifted his game to find ways to win. He played at in one of the matches of the year in the second round against Nathan Aspinall. They both averaged over 103 in that match. It was a back and forth match, but Rob Cross always seemed to be that little bit in front in that match. And that's why he got over the line, even though Nathan Aspinall, the reigning world match play champion, was playing as good as we've ever seen him on the big stage. He never let Damon Heta in the next round. He always seemed to be a little bit better than Stephen Bunting, who still was playing pretty well in that match himself. And we talked about the final. There's nothing we can say negative about Rob Cross other than he wasn't the best we've ever seen him. He had to really play at the level he played in the World Final 6 years ago if he was going to win that match, 107-ish. Although, as you mentioned, the red bit stat, 107 was what he did throw against the throw, and it still wasn't enough to get more than a small handful of breaks. But even in the group stage, he got through a last leg decider against Martijn Kleermaker. He outplayed Fallon Sherrick after the first couple legs were a little tight. The only really poor match was the one against Michael van Gerwen, who we definitely need to come on later in the show, as you mentioned, where I have no idea how Rob Cross lost that match because Michael van Gerwen looked poor in that and somehow won it. But overall, it was a very successful week for Rob Cross. He's shown that he is still one of the best players in the world. He's shown that he can handle anything thrown at him. And okay, he didn't win the final, but he certainly won a lot of respect from me, and I already had quite a bit for him by just how much he handled an absolute onslaught and still tried to fight back, still tried to keep coming, even when he was 10 legs down and with no chance to win. I think he can take a lot out of this week, even if he didn't win the title.
Continue our look back at the Grand Slam in a moment. Was it the best tournament of the year so far? We're also going to be looking ahead to the Players' Championship finals. But before we do that, let's bring in our first guest on this week's show. He is a player making his debut in the Players' Championship finals this weekend. Here's our chat with Connor Scutt. I'm pleased to say I'm joined by one of the debutants in the Players' Championship finals this weekend, Connor Scutt. Thanks for joining us again, Connor. How are you doing?
Not too bad, mate. Not too bad. Anytime I enjoy talking to you guys.
Great to get you on. Obviously, you were one of our guests on episode 1, so it's been good to follow your progress, and there's lots to catch up on because we're nearing the end of your second year as a PDC Tour card holder. This second season is going to finish off with that debut in the Players' Championship finals, but also the World Championship as well next month. So how excited are you to play in these two big events to cap off the year?
Very excited. I mean, my goal for my first year was to try and make both of these events, which I obviously didn't manage to do. But I'm happy that in the second year I've managed to make them both, and sort of I can put a sort of last minute fight for my tour card together, hopefully.
Definitely, yeah. We'll touch on that race to keep your tour card a bit later. And we look back at your 2 years on the tour so far. There's been some standout moments, and that the first of them came very early on. The third Players' Championship of 2022, a run to the semi-finals. How much confidence did you take from a big run like that so early on?
I think that run probably come a bit too early for me, if that makes sense. I think I would have been better off making like a few last 16s or like maybe last 32s. I think making that so soon, I sort of thought to myself, well, I can do it. But obviously the game at the PDC is at such a high level, it doesn't actually work like that. You still have to sort of treat every day as it comes sort of thing. So I think I went through quite a long string of first round knockouts after that weekend. So I think that it come a bit too soon, and it's just a strange one because you're sort of full of confidence from doing it, but you almost start to expect more of yourself. And I still am really new, but I was even newer then. So I wasn't used to the environment and stuff like that. It was a bit of a run out of nowhere, really.
Interesting you say that, because the other guest that we've got on this week, Dylan Slevin, his first Players' Championship this year, he made the semi-finals, and we were talking about that. I guess the expectations suddenly rise up when you have a big run so early on, when, as you say, you're probably expecting to make those slow bits of progress, last 32s, last 16, and not make that big jump so quick.
Yeah, I think the big jump so quick, I mean, especially like someone that's so new to it, you can sort of get ahead of yourself, and I think that's probably what I did. So there was obviously lots and lots of stuff happened last year or whatever that like contributed to a bit of a slack middle of the season. So I had a good start, bad middle, and a half decent end to the season. I think a lot of it come from making the semi-final a bit too early for myself.
Well, let's carry on the look back at last year then, and we talk about an upcoming World Championship debut in the PDC. Last year you did get to play at the Lakeside, the WDF World Championships, and as a tour card holder you went in as one of the favourites with the bookies but lost out in the first round. Was that a tough defeat to get over?
It was. It was a tough defeat, to be fair. I mean, I'm over it now, I'm happy to say, but at the time, I think I played. I wasn't too sure who Sean was, and it was after that I sort of learned he's a very, very good dart player. So it's a matter of youth getting the better of me. I didn't have as much experience as what I do now. Didn't really prepare properly. There's lots of things about that day that I would have changed. I didn't have a practice on the main stage before I played the game, and that's because I arrived later on in the day. Just things like that I could have, if I knew, I could have prepared a lot better, if that makes sense. So looking back, it's a good thing that it happened, really, because from things like that you learn. You don't learn anything by going to these places and sort of doing your thing and winning every time. You're better off learning earlier on than having to learn lessons later on, sort of thing.
Yeah, a good learning experience. We saw you a few more times on the stage in that first year in the PDC, a few appearances on the Euro Tour. You had another quarter-final in one of the last Players' Championships. You made a late push to try to get to Minehead, but how did you reflect on your 2022, that first year on the tour?
I think the end of the year, that last tournament, I knew what I had to do, and I sort of took it upon myself to go, right, you know what you got to do, you just got to go and do it. And I had a good run. I beat, who was Peter Wright, Whitlock. I think I beat Mike Kivenhoven first game. Then after that, I beat Andrew Gilden and just lost out to Schindler in the quarters. And it was good to know that under a bit of pressure where I did need to push on and try and get into stuff and qualify for stuff, I had that sort of run in me when I knew I really needed to do it. So that was a massive positive for me.
And it's a fairly long break then from that last event of the year to then this season starting around 2 months or so. So how did you spend that time? Did you take any breaks at all? Or have you tried to do anything differently this year in terms of practice preparation for events?
Not overly. I mean, I'm still a really avid practicer, but I'm learning when to take breaks and when not to take breaks, and I'm sort of learning to almost like sort of tapering towards events, if that makes sense. Like making sure I'm not doing stupid amounts of hours during the week before an event, making myself tired, just making sure I'm just ticking over so I've still got all of my energy for that event. I know darts isn't really it shouldn't take an awful lot out of you, but it does at times.
No, it certainly makes sense. And we get on to this year then, June, we see you go on another deep run, making a semi-final. At what point this season do you start to think about the World Championship and where you're positioned with your tour card, especially this second year when you're almost likely you've got to get to the World Championship to keep that tour card as well?
It was I think, did I make a quarter-final before that? I think it was around my birthday. And I think Brendan Dolan beat me in a last 16 or quarter-final, and I had some good scalps that day. And I thought to myself, right, I've done a lot of tinkering with my setup and stuff like that and tried to get that right. I'm still tinkering a little bit now because I can't help myself. It's a bad habit. But yeah, I sorted it out and I was like, right, I thought I cracked it, sort of thing. So I carried on. I was nice and confident for a lot of events. I didn't play bad in a lot of events, if that makes sense. And then the semi-final, that day I beat some really good players. I think, was it Ross Smith 6-1, Keen Barry 6-0, Dedeka 6-0, beat George Killington and Christian Perez. It was a really good sort of run for me, and it let me know what I was doing was right, if that makes sense. So I've just carried on doing that sort of thing up to now.
Well, it seems to be working. We get to October, there's just 6 Players' Championships of the season left to go. We've got that block of 4 events, and going into the third day, you're on the borderline for the World Championship and you break new ground, reach your final. Just talk us through that day, because I guess like all the players, you believe in your ability that you can go that far, but at what point in the day do you think you were onto something special?
I think there's a cliche, isn't it? Everyone says, I wouldn't go to events if I didn't think I could win them. A lot of people, you don't really think you're going to win it. You know that you can. You know your ability is sort of there, but no one really believes in that room they're 100% going to win it, because there's so much talent in that room now. It's just ridiculous. Like I didn't really think about making the final until the semis. I played GM Van Veen, and I said to myself before the game, I was like, if you get chances, take it. Because in the last 2 semi-finals I played, I had chances at doubles and things, and I didn't take them. So I thought, if I focus more, take my chances when I get them, I can. If I don't win, I'm at least going to get close. That was the sort of thing I thought to myself in the semis. Give it like the best shot that I can to actually get past this stage this time.
I've got to mention the round before that as well, because I'm sure it's a win that meant a lot to you as well. The quarterfinals against Gary Anderson, 4-0 up, he gets it back to 4-4. You then win the next 2 to beat him 6-4, and I understand Gary's someone that you've looked up to for a while as well. So what did that game mean to you, and to beat him as well?
Yeah, that's my favourite player. Like I was lucky enough to meet him at that Unicorn Next Generation Day, and sort of since then he was the one that I didn't base my game around his game or anything like that, but the more he was just my favourite player. So actually playing him was quite difficult. Like my manager said, I looked really calm in that game, but I wasn't. It was like calm on the surface and paddling like mad underneath, sort of thing. But 4-0 up was nice, and then as soon as he started putting things together and hitting his doubles, and I was like, don't lose this from 4-0 up. Please don't lose this from 4-0 up.
And you mentioned the semi-final against Gian Van Veen. You get past him, you get to the final. It's Radek Sagansky. Not often we see 2 players from outside the top 64 meet in a Pro Tour final, so it's a huge opportunity for both of you. What were those moments like between winning that semi-final and then starting the final? Because there's not really a lot of time for it to sink in what's about to happen.
It's a bit of a blur, to be fair. Like, you just sort of go into autopilot mode. So you take your little break in between the 2. And then it's just try and treat it like any other game sort of thing, which I did for the start of it. But then a 1-4-2 from Radek seemed to bring me back down to reality, and the sort of the gravity of the moment sort of kicked in. If I think I'd have been a lot more relaxed in that final if I knew for sure I was going to be safe for the Worlds and safe for the players, if that makes sense. Within my head, I was like, right, if I win it, I'm definitely going to be safe. And I shouldn't have thought like that. I should have just played it like all of the other games. But he did come back amazingly. I can't remember what I was up in that game, but the way he come back was outstanding. And a combined world ranking of 150 something. it was a strange final. I see there was a lot of people on Twitter and things. There was no nasty comments like how did they make the final and stuff like that. It was all like no one saw this coming. Those sorts of posts, and I agreed. I didn't see it coming either.
Yeah, it was a great final to watch. Maybe one that we weren't expecting, but we certainly enjoyed it. And that 1-4-2 from Radek, that was certainly a killer, wasn't it? Well,
definitely.
A few weeks later, though, your spot in Minehead and Ali Pali is confirmed. And as someone who has dreamed of being a dart player when they were a kid, what was that moment like when you'd found out you'd done enough and you would be playing in the biggest tournament in darts at Ali Pali for the first time?
I don't think it's fully kicked in yet. I think it will like sort of fully settle in when the draw comes out. Because I'm thinking about the Players Championships at the minute. I haven't really. I'm thinking about Ali Pali, but I'm not. When I'm practicing, I'm thinking about the Players Championship. I'm not thinking about the World Championship yet because the draw's not out. It's a weird one. It's almost like there's a job to do first, so I'm not sort of looking too far ahead.
And yeah, of course, all the focus is going to be on Minehead this weekend. Gabriel Clemens first up on Friday, but we have to talk about the World Championship. The draw comes around on Monday. You're going to be one of the players sitting down at 4:30 to watch and see your name get drawn out?
I'm hoping I might be a little bit closer than sitting on the sofa, but we'll see how Minehead goes and my availability on the Monday or whatever. I think me and Mr. Kiernan might take a trip down to London to give it a look, maybe.
Happy days, that'd be cool. Well, how do you approach these 2 events coming up? Because as we touched on at the start, there's a lot riding on it in relation to your tour card getting into the top 64. Do you try and blank that out, just focus on the tournaments themselves, or is it going to be in the back of your mind that you do need some results to avoid going back to Q School?
I mean, it's going to be very hard to try and blank it out of my mind that I'm going to need to do well or win a couple of games at these events to keep my card. But on the other hand, losing a tour card these days, it's not the be all and end all having the card. Like it's really nice and it's where I want to be, and I love playing in the PDC. But it's sort of, I suppose years ago there was a fear if you lost your card, how are you going to make money playing darts without being like a big name that's been around for years? Whereas now with other things that aren't the PDC, you can still make a bit of money and things like playing in other avenues. So it's not. I really want to keep my card, but it's almost that there's other options. There's safety nets, which is nice. It's something that, so I can panic as much as I like about losing my card, but when I look at the whole picture, that it's something that you don't really have to worry about too much anymore.
No, it definitely makes sense. And we should mention as well your new darts as well, the Connor Scutt V2s released by Mission recently. What were the main changes that you looked for from your V1s, I guess? And they look to be flying well for you, that run to the final on the Pro Tour, and I can see you've been cleaning up at a local level as well the last few weeks.
Yeah, it's so they're based off of another dart that's completely smooth, and I wasn't playing great with what I was using, so I had them just floating around. I used to have like 80 odd sets of darts, and I'm one of those people that used to have a throw with whatever, whenever. So I picked them up and they went really well. So I was like, okay. So I started playing with them, and I think when Mission made me my first prototype set, my first game at PDC, I averaged 100 with them. So it was sort of like, and I qualified for a Euro Tour that weekend as well, and that was their sort of first PDC outing. And the first competition I played with them was at the Basingstoke Open, and I won the Basingstoke Open with them as well. It's sort of like, as soon as I was using them, they just seemed to go where I want, which was nice. But the main change is they've got a silica coating now. So the coating, like when your hands start to sort of get warm and things, it gets tacky. Like, I don't have a very good sort of natural grip on my hands. That's why I do use like a grip chalk and stuff like that. But the warmer the dart gets, it seems to get stickier, which is really handy for me. I'll also go everywhere with hand warmers now as well. So if I do get there and like something's like the venue's a bit cold or whatever, I sort of have the hand warmer on my darts to sort of warm them up. It's weird. So it's almost like the silica coating, it just gets tacky. It's really strange.
Well, they're definitely working at the moment, and as we know, still 2 more events to go this season. But looking back on these last 2 years, what would you say have been the biggest lessons that you've learned whilst being on the tour?
Biggest lessons is probably don't worry about who you're playing, because I used to be awful for that. I used to see the draw and panic. And it was almost like I wasn't playing to sort of win it. I was playing to make sure the defeat didn't look too bad, which is the complete wrong way to play. I've learned I don't have to practice 3 hours, 4 hours in a row before an event starts. I can do little and oftens, which is good. Because I still do it sometimes, but I'd get there at like sort of 8:30, 9 in the morning, and I wouldn't come off the boards. Like I'd be practicing for like 2 hours at a time, which is just silly because you've got a whole day to go. So it's little things, and like you talk to other players and things, and you find out what they do. You get into like little practice games and stuff like that. It's just sort of you got to be like a sponge when you first start. I think just absorb what everyone's telling you. So I've learned a lot really over 2 years. It feels like it's gone really quick.
Well, Connor, always great to get you back on the show, and congratulations on these last couple of years qualifying for the players this weekend and the World Championship. Wish you the best of luck for both of those and what else is to come this year as well.
Lovely. Thank you very much, mate. Thank you for having me. Always enjoy doing these.
Thanks again to Connor for joining us. Now continuing our look back at the Grand Slam, and what a week it was in Wolverhampton. A 9-darter Bo Greaves almost making it out of the groups, topping her group, and we also saw some thrillers in the knockout rounds as well. But where, for you, does the Grand Slam rank in terms of our tournament of the year so far?
I mean, it was definitely a very good tournament. I mean, it always is. And the fact that, the group stage, that adds that little bit of drama because you can afford to lose a match. Well, sometimes. I mean, obviously, you're Michael Smith. You win your first two, and in the end, you couldn't afford to lose a match. But often you can afford to lose one and still, in Rob Cross's case, go all the way to the final of this tournament. And that's because of the group stage. And, that added drama especially on Monday and Tuesday night, when you had on each night 2 winner-take-all matches to determine who survived and who didn't. Bo Greaves going into the last match, a last leg against Damon Hedda. In many ways, Damon Hedda was lucky to get to a last leg decider because Bo Greaves had Damon under pressure over those first 8 legs. But she just picked the worst time to have probably her worst leg of the tournament, just could not find a big treble on her throw. And that's why she ended up going out. While had she won that leg, she not just wouldn't have gone out, she would have topped the group. She would have been group champion had she won that leg. But, that added drama makes it good. And there were so many really tight matches. I mentioned that Nathan Aspinall, Rob Cross one where they both averaged over 100. The Gary Anderson, Goran Price one, it wasn't as tight, but they also both averaged 103. And it was one of the, I said at the time, was the match of the year, in my opinion. Of course, I think I agree that the Aspinall Cross match the following day was even better. But so was the Humphries-Gary Anderson match in the quarterfinals. Unfortunately, the semifinals and finals just didn't live up, and neither did the second night of the quarterfinals. Up until that point, I thought it was a really good tournament with a lot of really good matches. But if we're going for tournament of the year, I think we need something more out of the semifinals. We need something more out of the final. We need something more out of the second half of the quarterfinals than we got. We got, in the end, 3 of the last 5 matches where one player won more than two-thirds or more of the legs. And the other 2 matches weren't that great either. I will give this tournament a B+. I really enjoyed it. It is one of my favorite events on the calendar. But again, I want to see that final again, but maybe it going the full 31 legs. Granted, the way Luke Humphries was playing, if it went the full 31 legs, he probably would have won it 22-9.
Yeah, I think I put the mockers on it a couple of weeks ago in our preview, and I said it'll be a 16-15 final. We didn't get that in the end. And just a plug as well, Tournament of the Year, that is one of our awards, the weekly Dartscast awards. We're going to be back at the start of next year with that, and we have reached out to our sponsors from last year, and if you are interested in coming on board, sponsoring an award, do get in touch with us. We might have a few available, so yeah, don't delay in that. Get in touch with us. And looking at how the Tournament of the Year has gone the last 3 years that we've been running the awards, it's been the PDC World Championships 3 years in a row. Could we get a new winner this year? I think the Grand Slam is going to get some nominations, and as you touched on there, the final, the semi-finals, and then the last 2 quarterfinals, they were for the most part one-sided games. The scorelines dictate that, but I think before that second lot of quarterfinals, we were probably on course for a new front runner for Tournament of the Year, because the drama that we had in that first 7 days of the tournament, there was a lot of exciting stuff, and working my way backwards, I guess, and you mentioned quite a lot of it there, but that Friday night, one of the best sessions, one of the best nights of darts that we've seen probably all year. Those 2 quarterfinals, James Wade, Josh Rock going all the way, 16-15, that dramatic deciding leg, and then following it up, you couldn't even catch your breath. We had Luke Humphries, Gary Anderson, 16-14 to Luke Humphries. It was another thrilling game as well, and the last 16 game as well with Aspinall and Cross that we've mentioned. Again, a thoroughly entertaining game as well. But the group stage as well, how they finished up the last game of the groups. We had Damon Hedda, Bo Greaves going all the way to that last leg, Bo missing that dart to win the match and top her group. And during that game, we had Damon Hedda pull out arguably one of the shots of the year, the 164, the 130 to get himself back in that game. But we did still see some history from the ladies. We saw for the first time 2 ladies win a match in the same PDC major tournament. Fallon Sherrick, Bo Greaves both winning their second group games on the Sunday. We saw a 9-darter with Ryan Searle winning his game with the 9-dart leg, which was pretty special, and the emergence as well of Stowe Bunce, and I'll touch more on him in the outro as well. But what a run he had, beating Peter Wright, Stephen Bunting, Andrew Gilding on his way to the quarterfinals. First American to go that far in the Grand Slam, and on a personal note, was a pleasure to be there in person in Wolverhampton as his guest on that first night, and to see him produce that performance on his debut against Peter Wright was pretty special. But as a tournament as a whole, I think it will get some nominations, but I think there are two other tournaments in terms of the major events which will get a lot of votes. I'm looking at the World Cup, the revamped World Cup this year with the group stage all pairs. That's the leading contender for me right now. You've got the UK Open in there as well, especially with how it ended, that incredible finale with Andrew Gilding and Michael van Gerwen. So I'll put the Grand Slam in there as well. They're the three leading contenders at the moment. They've set the bar for this year. As far as entertainment, it's now down to the Players' Championship finals, the Worlds, and Lakeside in between, to see if we could get maybe another dark horse, another contender for that tournament of the year.
So now let's turn ahead to this upcoming week, the Players' Championship finals in Minehead. It's the last major stop before the Alexandra Palace for the World Championships. MVG, the defending champion, do you think he'll though be able to defend the Players' Championship finals this weekend, or are we looking at another new name on a major trophy?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the calendar year for 2023, we've had 6 ranking majors in the PDC. 5 of them, we've seen a new name added to the trophy. Smith at the Worlds, Gilding at the UK Open, Aspinall at the match play, Humphries at the Grand Prix and the Grand Slam. It's only been Peter Wright winning the European Championship. He's been the anomaly in the list. He's been a multiple time winner of that particular major title. But the Players' Championship finals, it is one of those events that Michael van Gerwen has continued to dominate even during his leaner spell over the last few years. He's won it 3 of the last 4 years. He's won it a record amount of time, and you compare it to some other major events that he's not won for a considerable amount of time. You think of the Euros, the Grand Slam, the last time he won those events, 2017, so it's been quite a long time. But the Players' Championship finals, he has still got that strong record. And you think back to this time last year, he was winning in Minehead. He had a 9-darter, a 170 in the final to beat Rob Cross, and a final again where Rob Cross averaged over 100 and didn't finish up on the winning line. But we can only go off recent performances, and you look at the Grand Slam, and I mentioned it earlier, I think Rob Cross should have finished top of that group. Michael van Gerwen, there could have been a possibility that he didn't even make it through the group stage. I mean, okay, the first game against Fallon Sherrick, a great performance, 101 average, but the next 2 games could have lost both of them. 5-4, he won against Rob Cross, and then the last game, again, he had to come back from behind to beat Martijn Kleermaker 5-4. So could have finished up with 1 win instead of the 3 that he had in the end there. And again, it was a below par performance against Damon Heta in the last 16, ended up going out. But I think we are looking at a different winner for this event. And okay, Michael van Gerwen, I should mention one stat. I'm going to bring out a stat this week that I've managed to dig out, and this the last time that Michael van Gerwen averaged under 95 in a best of 11 in this particular tournament, the Players' Championship finals, you've got to go all the way back to 2013, and that's a run of 16 consecutive games where he's averaged 95 and above in that race to 6. That's either the first round or more recent years when it's gone up from 32 to 64 players, also including that second round. So it does seem to produce some good stuff right from the get-go, and he's going to have to, because he's got some tough games in there. Callum Ridds in the first round, he's won a title this year. Could be potentially Ross Smith in the second round, a former major winner. He's got the better of Michael over those shorter formats in the past as well. So it's a tricky start for Michael. He's going to have to be on it from the get-go if he's going to defend this title. And I do expect him to make that Saturday night and then get into the last day of play. And if he's got 2 or 3 wins under his belt and he's played well in them, then he could well go all the way and retain the title. But for me, like I said, I think we are looking at a new winner for this event. And looking at the bottom half, I do really like the look of Gary Anderson at the moment. And I know he's in the same quarter as Luke Humphries, but I think if they do end up meeting, I think he's going to get revenge for the Grand Slam. I think he's going to beat the new Grand Slam champion. As for the top half, I still think that Gerwyn Price is due one of these big titles. So I'm going to go with Price and Anderson. It's going to be another rematch from the Grand Slam. They're going to meet in the final. And again, we're going to go down that revenge route. We had Anderson beating Humphries. We're going to have Price beating Anderson, avenging that defeat in Wolverhampton. And finally, going Price is going to win another big title, and he is finally going to win one in Minehead as well.
Wow. There will be a new name on the trophy if you're right. Weird thinking a new name being the former world number one, but he has, as you mentioned, never won in Minehead, even though his first major final was in Minehead all those years ago at the UK Open. I also think there'll be a new name on the trophy, but it's a name that we've been seeing quite a bit of recently. I don't think Luke Humphries is beatable right now. I mean, he is beatable. He absolutely is beatable. He lost in the quarterfinals of the European Championship, but he's also not beatable. He's too confident. He's playing too well, and I think he's going to win another major. I really think he is going to just blitz this field. Gary Anderson's the one player that scares me, like if I'm Luke Humphries, like he did in the quarterfinals of the Grand Slam just a few weeks ago, because Gary Anderson has been the form players in the Players' Championship events this year. He had the highest average of people who played more than one match in Players' Championship events this year. And the last time he was the best player in the Players' Championship events over the course of the year was 2014. He went on and won his only Players' Championship final ahead of winning his first world title the following month. So Gary Anderson's been in this type of position before, and he won the tournament, and he won the World Championship. And I'm not saying Gary Anderson's going to win the World Championship right now, but he's playing as close to that level as he's ever been in the past 6 or 7 years. Still, it's nowhere near where Luke Humphries is right now. There are other players who, could get their first breakthrough. If I'm Damon Hedda, I like my draw here. Go back a month, I wouldn't have said that. Jules Van Dongen at one point was top 10 on form, according to FDI, but he didn't have that good of a last weekend in the Players' Championship events, and it seems like that run that he was on in September hasn't continued. He could find it again, but if I'm Damon Hedda, I want to play Jules Van Dongen right now. Then going against either Jose de Sousa or Kevin Dotes, two players who've been inconsistent this year, that's another match, especially over a shorter format, that I would rather have, and that gets him into the third round. And it obviously gets more difficult with each passing round, but he's in a quarter that I think is the weakest one, and he's still never made a semifinal. He's won 7 PDC singles titles over the course of his career, 5 Players' Championships, a Euro Tour, a World Series event, but he's never even made a major semifinal other than the World Cup, which doesn't count as a singles event. Only one other player has 7 titles without making a semifinal, Jamie Caven. So he's, in a way, the most successful player in PDC history without a major semifinal. This is a very good opportunity with this draw for Damon Hedda to finally get through to the last 4, kind of like Ian White did here a few years ago when he was the top seed. But I just don't see anyone beating Luke Humphries right now. I think Luke will beat Damon Hedda in the semifinal, get through to yet another final, and it doesn't really matter who he meets in the final. But I'll pick someone. So many options. How about Josh Rock? This will be Josh Rock's first time. Guarantee there'll be a new name on the trophy because Josh Rock will get through to his first major final, but it's going to be Luke Humphries. It's always Luke Humphries right now. 11 legs to 6, and he has won a third major in under 2 months.
Well, those are our predictions for the Players' Championship finals this weekend. Let's move on to our final guest on this week's show, a player that's got a late call-up to play in the tournament. He's making his debut. Here's our chat with Dylan Slevin. I'm pleased to say I'm joined by one of the debutants in the Players' Championship finals this weekend, Dylan Slevin. Thanks for joining us again, Dylan. How are you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me back again. I'm feeling good. Getting some hard-earned practice in before the weekend.
Good to hear it. Now, first of all, let's just touch on the weekend coming up then, because you are going to be going to Minehead. It was announced on Monday, yesterday, when we were talking, that you'd received that late call-up to replace Danny Noppert in the field. When did you first find out or get an idea that you might be heading to Minehead?
Monday, I was on my way up to the airport because I was coming over here to Matt for from Monday till Friday just for a practice session, because I wasn't going to be playing darts really up until Christmas, because I unfortunately didn't finish in the top 64 and hadn't qualified for Minehead. So I just said I'd come over and do a week's practice over here and then go back home and come back over before the Worlds. But as I was on my way up to the airport, Matt rang me and just says, would you fancy playing in the players finals this weekend? And I said, yeah, sure, yeah, throw me down there to play anyway, and we'll give it a crack and see how it goes.
Happy days, and it's a great opportunity, isn't it, for yourself to get back on the stage, get some stage time before the World Championship. So you've still got 2 events to play this season, but how do you reflect on this first year on the PDC Tour? Are you happy with how it's gone so far?
Yeah, no, look, I'm happy enough with how it went. Finished outside the top 64 in the ProTour order of merit, but look, I got in a bit, Danny Noppert pulled out, but so far this year, I'm happy with how I went. Qualified for I think 7 or 8 Euro Tours on my debut year, playing in the Players Championship finals, qualified for Ali Pali. Look, it's going better than I thought I would. If someone told me at the start of the year at the first Players Championship that you'll be playing in Ali Pali, I'd just look at them and say just stop talking.
Well, let's rewind back then to when we last had you on the show. You were chatting with our colleague Matthew. It was just after Q School and you'd got your tour card, and you said that it hadn't sunk in yet. But what was that moment like when you walked into the room for that first Pro Tour just a few weeks later?
Yeah, no, sure. When you walk in, you see all the people you look up to, the likes Gary Anderson, Adrian Lewis, Michael Smith, and Gerwin. You see all these big names that you've been watching since you were, young, and to actually see them and play against them as well is, it's just any dart thrower's dream come true,
Well, you certainly made a name for yourself in that first Pro Tour, going all the way to the semi-finals, and you kicked off the day with that 103 average in your first match. Did that settle any nerves you might have had performing so well in the first round?
Well, to be honest, going into that very first Players Championship, I felt I didn't feel any nerves, didn't I? Just went about my business, got to the semi-final. Then I felt like there was nerves after it, for the second day, because I've got to the semi-final now. It's a tough tournament. You've the best 128 players of darts in one room fighting to be the last person to come out of that place, with the title. But yeah, no, it's I think after that first one, it just it sank in oh wow, you got to a semi-final of a Pro Tour. That's a big achievement, and then the nerves started to kick in then after that.
Touch on that, obviously getting to that semi-final on day one after having a run like that, was it hard to then manage your expectations after that? Because obviously it does take a bit of time still to adjust to playing against these top players week in, week out.
Yeah, you have to get used to when you're on a double, you have to be taking out that double in 3 darts because you're not going to be coming back. So it's now that I'm gone nearly my year through, I know what I kind of have to do now for next year. So just try to win more games, really. That's all I'm going to be trying to do next year, and qualify for a few majors.
And you touched on the Euro Tours as well. You ended up qualifying for 7 of the last 9. You seem to have got a knack for coming through those qualifiers. What were those experiences like going on the Euro Tour and going up in front of those crowds this year?
Yeah, no, stage experience for the big one there, Ali Pali, to get loaded 7 times to be on a stage playing in front of a crowd, getting used to the chanting and the booing and the whistling. It's just you're getting a feel for what it's like, So hopefully now I can settle for this weekend and have a good run at the players, and then after the players it's on to the Worlds, So and hopefully I can make a mark on the Worlds, and then it'll set me up for next year.
Definitely. Well, we should mention the World Championships as well, because we have got the draw coming up on Monday. Are you going to be one of the players watching it at 4:30 to see who you get pulled out of the hat with?
Yeah, to be be honest, I don't really know. If I see it on the TV, I'll flick it on. If I don't, I'll always see it somewhere on social media or Twitter or Facebook. So I'm not really bothered with the draw. It's whoever plays their game on the day, and anyone can beat anyone. At the end of the day.
Still a special moment if you do watch the draw. If you don't, you see it afterwards, because I know you've said before that getting to Ali Pali in your first year, it would be a dream come true, and you've got there with plenty to spare. All those Euro Tours, the semi-final at the start of the year, high up on that ProTour list. At what point did you start to maybe feel a bit safe and that you could start to prepare for that World Championship?
Not really, because if you start thinking like that, you're not going to get results, and the results aren't going to go your way. You won't go in with your 100% game. So I wasn't really too bothered about that. I wasn't keeping an eye on the table, So it was just mainly just go in, get results, win a few games, and just keep the ranking money ticking, And then the last weekend, it was just win a game, win that game, win your next game. I was just trying to keep winning. That's all I really tried to do.
You mentioned your manager as well, Matt Ward. You're part of his stable of players at MDA, and I guess something you're probably looking forward to playing at Ali Pali. You're also going to be part of his vlogs. We saw them last year during the World Championship, and all his players playing. Has he said that he's going to be bringing them back this year as well?
To be honest, I'm actually not too sure. He's saying he's doing something on YouTube with all the players. He's filming me as we speak. There, I'd say 40 times a day. I can nearly say, you just can't take the phone out of that man's hand.
Well, you've probably not thought much about 2024 yet, but we know there's going to be some big changes on the tour next year. All those players' championships, they're going to be moving to midweeks. How's that going to affect you? Are you full time with the darts now, or are you going to have to juggle work with the darts still?
No, full time. At a young age, you don't have to worry about a mortgage. You don't have to worry about paying bills or a house or anything like that, so it's easier for us youngsters, but you feel sorry for the lads that actually have to juggle their work, and they might actually have to finish work, and then that adds on an extra pressure of, if I don't come here this weekend and get to this, this stage or this part of the tournament, I'm going to be down money, so it's not really going to affect me as much, but you just feel for the other players that actually do have a job and do like working during the week, and they might have to give up their jobs for darts,
Well, we should mention as well that you recently had your first set of darts released by your manufacturer, Mission. What was that like to see your first set of darts go on sale to the public?
Look, I said it to myself when I started, when my darts started to become reality. I said to myself, all I just want is a set of my own darts, and now that I have them, it's just even to see people go to a tournament back home or anything like that, and just see someone has your darts, it just proves to show how much support you have and all,
Now that is pretty cool. And before you signed with Mission, then you were working on your own setup with them. What darts were you using? Were they similar to what your current setup is?
Yeah, similar-ish. Mission done a few tweaks to just make their own, kind of my dart. I was using the Harrow Rapida before. I was using them in Q school, and I literally just my uncle had a set of them, and I was out in his house and he was practicing, so I said, just give us a throw at them, will ya? So he passed the darts over anyway, and first 3 darts was a 180. I said I like them. Then straight on the darts corner, looked them up and got a few sets of them, and just started throwing with them ever since. And they got me through Q school, so
No, it definitely worked. And your new set of darts now with Mission, we're going to see them on stage at Minehead this weekend, and the World Championships. You mentioned you're with your manager Matt this week. You've got that call up for the Players Championship finals, but what's it going to be like these weeks between then and the Worlds? Have you got any local events, anyone you're going to be practicing with, anything special before the Worlds?
Yeah, no, look, I'm over here Leicester at the moment, I'm over practicing there in Matt's local pub, so he has a few people lined up. I'm currently practicing with Chris Wickendham. Then I have Ricky is coming down, and he's going to do an all-practice session with me before the players at the weekend. And I think it's on the cards that I'm coming over a week before the Worlds to have another practice session, and I'll obviously be playing when I go back home. I'll try and play in as much tournaments as possible, to get the eye in and get the arm flowing and just keep it loose for the 15th.
Excellent. And lastly, we had a look on Wikipedia. It's got your walk-on song down as I still haven't found what I'm looking for by you two. I should check first. Is that your right walk-on song?
No, to be honest, I don't know who put that up there. No, it's Crazy Nights by Kiss. I always loved that song. I always practice to that song. So, and you try to find a song that gets the crowd going. You like to have the buzz. You like to have the buzz in the atmosphere. So I feel like that'll get the crowd going at Minehead and get them going at the Worlds.
Yeah, it certainly will. A song that was used back in the day by Wes Newton, the Premier Leagues. We've heard it plenty of times. I'm sure it will get the crowd going. So how much, just lastly, are you looking forward to hearing that song being played out at Ali Pally in a few weeks' time?
Oh, it's going to be a buzz. The nerves are going to go flying through the roof. But hopefully I can just hold the nerve and just, get over my first game and then get ready for the round two if I got over the first one,
Well, Dylan, it's great to get you back on the show. Congratulations on the year that you've had on tour so far, and I wish you all the best for Minehead, Ali Pally, and what else is to come in 2023 as well.
Perfect. Thanks very much.
Thanks again to Dylan for joining us now, continuing to look ahead to what's to come over the next few days. And on Monday, we have got the tour card holder qualifier for the World Championship, the last chance for tour card holders to get to Ali Pally. 4 spots up for grabs this year as things stand. So give us 2 players you think are going to qualify and 2 players that you want to qualify.
And just so our listeners know, it could end up actually being more than 4 because there were recently some suspensions announced. We don't know whether those will be appealed prior to the World Championships, but it's possible that the Indian qualifier will not be taking place, which could mean a 5th spot in the PDPA qualifier. But yeah, it's so hard to pick. It's going to be based. The seeding is going to be based on the top ranked order of merit of the non-qualifiers, assuming they do it the same way as before, which means assuming Adrian Lewis does not enter because he's not played anything since March, the top 4 seeds will be Alan Suter, Mervyn King, Vincent van der Voort, and Martijn Kleermaker, at least as things currently stand. Then it would be Roby John Rodriguez, unless he makes it through to the final in Minehead to steal his way into this field. Mensur Suljovic would be the 6th seed, Ryan Meikle the 7, Florian Hempel the 8. Then it goes down from there as things currently stand. But those are some big names. Of those ones, the one who's probably playing the best right now, the 2 that are playing the best, are Mervyn King and Mensur Suljovic. King had a dreadful year, but over the last week, he made it to the board final on 3 of the 4 days. He nearly played his way into the Players' Championship finals field from nowhere. Lost his ever-present status there, but still was playing some good stuff across that week and might take some form into the World Championship qualifier. Mensur Suljovic, I talked about it on the show a couple weeks ago, was playing some really good stuff at the back end of the year. Wasn't getting results, but was averaging over his season average in 15 of his last 23 events. You will look at some of the averages that he's thrown just since September: 101, 104, 98, 102, 105, 96, 101. A lot of good performances, but he's lost quite a few of those matches. But the big thing for Mensur is, where is his head right now? He's the player playing the best darts of the ones in this field, but I don't know if his head is where it needs to be to close out a tight match. He had chances in the Grand Slam qualifier to get in. It would not have done him enough to make the World Championships, but it would have gotten him some televised experience, which he hasn't had all year, but he couldn't close the door. That's the thing that scares me. He's playing well enough, but I'll still tip him for that reason. I got to go with the form players, so I'm going to tip him as one of them, and the other one I'm going to tip on current form. Do I want to go a pair of Austrians? No, I'm not gonna. I'll go Boris Kursmar. He always finds a way when it's all said and done. Another player who was playing well this year, but maybe not as well as last year when he was, top 40-esque. And he's in the Players' Championship final. If he wins the title, he won't be in the PDPA qualifier. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. I don't think he's going to win that. But I think Kursmar's a player who's playing well enough, so I'll tip him. So those are the two I'll tip. As far as who do I want, that's so unfair because I don't want to root against people per se. So I'm just going to have to go for a variety of reasons. One, I have to say Robert Owen because I stole his nickname. He's Stack Attack, I'm Stat Attack. So if I steal your nickname, I kind of have to root for you to get through the PDPA qualifier. It would be rude of me not to. And then one more that I want. Should I go Stephen Burton since he has my name? Sure, why not? I'll go with the one whose nickname I stole, and I'll go with the one whose name he stole from me. So those are the four I'm going with as my picks and my desires to get through the PDPA qualifier.
Some good picks there, and I've actually got one of those four is on my list. I'll start with them, and that is Mensah Suljovic. These are the players who I think are going to go through the qualifier, and you add him on your list of two people you think are going to get through. And again, like you said, the stats back it up, and via our friends at Darts Oracle, the averages for the last 2 months, the highest player on that list who hasn't qualified for the World Championship is Mensah Suljovic, and his average over the last 2 months, 94.66. If he'd have averaged that for the whole year, he wouldn't have to worry about this qualifier. But it does feel like he is getting into some form at just the right time. We did see him get to that semi-final on the floor back in June, and we thought maybe this is going to be the start of a renaissance for the gentle. But since then, he's played in 19 events in the PDC, be that Players' Championships, Euro Tour qualifiers, Grand Slam qualifiers, and he's won 2 games in 3 of those events. So won back-to-back games in 3 of those events. So he's not been able to get on a run like he has done with that semi-final back in June, as I mentioned. But the last of those 3 occasions, it was the Grand Slam qualifier. We did see him average 95, 101, dropped to an 88 for the last game and went out. But we are starting to see those higher averages coming to his game a bit more, the 102s, the 105s, the high 90s. And if he can put it all together, get through that qualifier, I think a lot of darts fans would love to see it. And this is the player who, through the weekly Dartscast checkout of the year at Ali Pali last season, the 161 against Michael van Gerwen. So we need him at the World Championships just so that we can all be reminded of it. And he's bound to leave that 161 again in a match, and we'll all be talking about it and going to find that clip again. And my second player, who I think is going to come through the qualifiers, from someone that has played in 16, I think, World Championships, to someone looking to get into their first one. And I should put an asterisk next to his name because we're not sure if he is going to play in the event. He only played 6 of the last 12 Players' Championships this season. But I'm going to go with Pascal Ruprecht, who, again, been playing some decent stuff over the last few months. You look at the games, the events that he has played in recent times. He's beaten the likes of Kim Huybrechts, Gabriel Clemens, Ricardo Pietrexco, and some of the games that he's lost to, the likes of Damon Heta, Rob Cross, he has pushed them close. I think the game with Rob Cross was 6-4. The game with Damon Heta was 6-5. And only recently, a week or so ago, got to the final of the German Super League. So I think if he enters the qualifier, I think he's got a good enough chance to get one of those spots. And just lastly, the 2 that I want to qualify, yeah, this is a tough one. I'm going to go, first of all, I'm going to go with Mervyn King because every palace needs a king, and it wouldn't be right to have a World Championships at Ali Pali without Mervyn King. So he's going to be on my list. Second one, let's go with another legend of the game. Let's go with Richie Burnett. And I said it before on the show, the interview that we had with him last year, I think it was one of my favourites from our time doing this show. And he did call this run with a tour card his last chance, basically his last dance. And if he doesn't win through the qualifiers next week, that is it. He's not going to try and win back that tour card. He might change his mind. He might try and go to Q-School. But if he doesn't, then that is going to be it. And I think we want the last hurrah for Richie Burnett in the PDC to be at Ali Pally, to see him have that walk on, and maybe he'll pull out that celebration. We saw quite a lot of it at the UK Open earlier on in the year. So Richie Burnett, he's going to be the last one that will want to get through.
Of course, we haven't seen the entries yet, so it's possible that there will be a king at the Palace, just a different one, if suddenly Corey Cadby comes over and wins through the qualifier. So you might get a king, just a different one. But we still have we have one listener question this week from Longusta, and it is: both amazing achievements, but would you prefer to win the Worlds twice back-to-back like Adrian Lewis or Gary Anderson did, or 3 times separately, never retaining it, such as John Lowe, 3 in 3 decades in his case, John Part or Michael Van Gerwen?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think looking at the money in the game now, if you win it back-to-back, it's very likely you're going to get to world number 1. So you think back to the times when Adrian Lewis and Gary Anderson were winning consecutive world titles, it didn't get them to world number 1. So if you were to do it now, that's a milestone that you can pretty much guarantee ticking off. You go back-to-back world titles, you are going to get to world number 1. But if you win 3 titles, not in consecutive years, it's not as likely that you are going to get to world number 1. But I said it earlier, Peter Wright wins it every 2 years. If he does it again, he's going to be on 3. If you ask him, would you prefer to win 3 or 2, but those 2 are back-to-back, he's probably going to say 3, isn't he? Dart players are greedy. They want to win as much as they possibly can. For me, if I'm being put in this situation, 3 or 2, it doesn't really make a huge difference for me. I think 1 world title I'd be delighted with. And just think of the walk-ons as well. John McDonald, the ladies and gentlemen, 2-time back-to-back champion of the world. That's a big intro when we hear Gary Anderson or Adrian Lewis get the intro from the PDC MC. So that's probably going to get a bigger reaction than a 3-time world champion. And back-to-back, that is a special achievement to defend the world championship, win that tournament in consecutive years. You are staking a claim then to being the best in the world for a long period over those 2 years. 3 times, yeah, that would be pretty special to win it an extra time. But you know what? I can take being a 2-time back-to-back instead of 3. So we'll go with that. We're going to be rubbing shoulders with Adrian Lewis, with Gary Anderson. I'm going to be a 2-time back-to-back world champion.
You said 1 time would be enough, just be 1-time qualifier. I would settle for. Well, actually, no, I wouldn't, because I really don't want to be embarrassed. 3 sets to 0, 3 legs to 0 in each set, averaging 50-something on the big stage. Although hearing End of the World as we know it, walking onto that would be pretty cool. I'll go the other way from you. I mean, granted, winning 2 back-to-back, especially if they came pretty quickly, I could just, as you said, I'll be world number 1. I could just retire right then, take my £1 million. Maybe by that point it'd be 1.2 or 1.5 million plus, other prize money, and just, walk into retirement, never to be seen again. While winning 3, even though it would be more money, it might be spread out, and suddenly I'm going to have to slog through the tour for longer. But come on, 3-time world champion throwing darts. I mean, Gary Anderson, Adrian Lewis, they're legends, but John Lowe, John Part, Michael Van Gerwen are among the greats of all time. They're 3-time world champions. It's not a difficult question. I want that extra ring. I want that extra trophy. I want my name to be in that upper echelon that so few have. So that's my answer. Anything else for this week?
Got to say a few thank yous. Got to say thank you to our 2 guests, to Connor and Dylan, for joining us. Thank you to our sponsors. Thanks to Condor and Darts Corner for their continued support. And for Darts Corner, head on over to dartscorner.co.uk, dartscorner.com, wherever you are. They are the world's number 1 online darts retailer. Lots of exciting new darts and accessories on there. So do go and check them out. Thanks to everyone for listening as well. We appreciate the support. And I've got to say as well, before I sign off, a big thank you to Sto Bunt. We had him on our last episode as a guest, and we finished up the interview, and he asked me, is he going to see me in Wolverhampton? I said, no, I'll be watching, I'll be following at home. He said, well, would you like to join me as a guest? And I said, well, I can't really turn that down. So the first night of the Grand Slam, I was there in attendance to see him beat Peter Wright with that 102 average, and couldn't have asked for a better debut. And it was a pleasure to meet up with Sto in person after, meet his partner Crystal as well, and also a nice surprise seeing Peter Satira, the boss of the CDC. Great to meet him in person for the first time and catch up. A few other people as well at the Players Hotel. Nice to see little Richard Ashdown, Rog, Chizzy's manager. It was an unexpected outing for me, but really enjoyed it. So thanks to everyone that made that happen. And we'll be back next week, possibly 2 episodes next week. It's going to be a busy week, lots of Dynamite Darts content we've got planned. But until then, it is almost time for the Players' Championship finals. And when it does come round, it will be time to enjoy the darts.
Yes, indeed. I think we will have an extra episode. We'll be recording on Thanksgiving Day in the U.S. on Thursday as we do our Lakeside preview. We'll also come back with you after the Players' Championship final to recap the weekend in Minehead and maybe take a look at, or a first look at, the draw for the PDC World Championships. It is almost Dartsmas. It's the best time of the year. Thanks to everyone. Echoing, even though I wasn't there, echoing Alex, you're thinking of Stowe Bunce, because that was just a phenomenally nice thing he did for you, and I'm glad you enjoyed it and seemed to work. So, Stowe, if you ever want to ask me to come to any event in the U.S., make sure that you can do the same thing. Happy to join, since it seems to be good luck charm for you having the weekly Dartscast there. But for Alex Moss, I am Burton DeWitt. We'll be back more than once next week, maybe even later this week. So much to talk about because, well, it's Dartsmas.